We often think that the secret to learning is making things easy. But what if that's all wrong? What if the real key is making things harder? Today, we're going to talk about why a little bit of struggle isn't just a good thing, it's absolutely essential for building knowledge that actually sticks around.
So let's just start with this big question right here. Should learning feel easy? I mean, we're kind of conditioned to think so, right? If it's smooth, if it's effortless, it means we've got it. But what if that's a trap? What if the secret to real, durable, long-term learning is actually found in something called productive struggle? Yeah, let's totally unpack that.
Okay, so to get our heads around this, we're going to need a couple of tools for our educator's toolkit. And this first one, I want you to think of it less like a roadblock for students and more like a trip to the gym for their brain. We're talking about building a stronger learning muscle. And here it is. Tool number one is called desirable difficulties. I mean, the name itself is a little bit of a head scratcher, isn't it? Desirable difficulties? It sounds like an oxymoron. But it's a term from psychologist Robert Bjork, and it's brilliant. It means we should intentionally make learning feel harder in the moment. And you might be asking, why on earth would we do that? Well, it's because that extra effort, that challenge, is precisely what forces the brain to build stronger, more permanent pathways. So the difficulty, it's not a bug in the system, it's the key feature. So, what does this actually look like in a classroom? Well, here are some fantastic, super practical examples. We're talking about stuff you're probably already familiar with, like frequent low-stakes quizzing. This forces students to actively retrieve information, pull it out of their brain, not just passively recognize it on a page. Or things like spacing out study sessions instead of that last-minute cram session. Even something as simple as mixing up different problem types, interleaving, makes the brain work just a little bit harder to figure out what to do. It's genius. And the whole point of all this, the big goal here is to get past what's called the illusion of fluency. You know that feeling, right? It's when a student has seen something so many times they think, oh yeah, I know this, but they can't actually explain it or use it. They mistake familiarity for genuine understanding. So by adding these little bits of friction, we're basically forcing the brain to do the heavy lifting, which makes the learning way more solid. All right, that's tool number one. Now for tool number two. And this one really builds on the first. See, if desirable difficulties are all about helping students remember and recall information, this next tool is all about what they can do with that knowledge, especially when things get messy and the answer isn't obvious. And we call these ill-structured problems. And they're exactly what they sound like. They're not like a clean math problem with a single right answer. No, these are the messy, complex, real-world problems that don't have a clear path or a simple formula. They're designed to make students grapple with ambiguity, weigh different kinds of evidence, look at things from multiple perspectives, and actually build their own coherent argument. And this example is just perfect. Should our school ban single-use plastics? Whoa. There is no simple yes or no here, is there? To even begin to answer this, a student has to dive into science, economics, ethics, communication. They have to frame the problem, research potential solutions, and then defend their stance. There isn't one right answer in the back of the book. And that, right there, is the whole point. So why design assessments like this? Because this is how you build the skills that matter most. We're talking about the heavy hitters: critical thinking, collaboration, learning how to frame a problem in the first place, and thinking through the ethical side of things. I mean, these are the skills that will actually serve them in college, in their careers, and just in life. Okay, so we've got our two tools: desirable difficulties and ill-structured problems. Now, you might be thinking they sound like total opposites. One is structured, the other is messy, but that's not the right way to look at it. They're actually two sides of the same coin. They serve really different purposes, but they work together in this incredibly powerful, complementary way. This little chart here breaks it down beautifully. So just look at the goals, right? With desirable difficulties, the goal is all about boosting memory and helping students transfer what they know. But with ill-structured problems, the goal is to develop reasoning and decision-making. And you can see that in the structure too. One has a defined correct answer while the other is totally open-ended. They even come from different schools of thought in psychology, but you'll see how they can become best friends in your classroom. So if we had to boil this whole thing down to one simple idea, it's this: desirable difficulties help students remember and transfer knowledge. They build the foundation. Ill-structured problems, on the other hand, help students use and extend that knowledge. They're like building the skyscraper on top of that solid foundation. You really need both. Okay, so how do we actually make this happen?
Because the real magic isn't in picking one strategy over the other. The real power comes when you weave them together, when you create a system where that factual fluency can meet genuine, flexible thinking.
Let's look at a concrete example from a biology class. It's so good. So the teacher starts by building that fluency with our first tool, frequent low-stakes quizzes on key vocabulary and processes. That's the desirable difficulty part. Then, once that foundation is there, they hit the students with the ill-structured problem, that project about banning plastics. Now, the students have to pull all that knowledge they've been practicing and actually apply it to solve a complex, real-world problem.
And this is where the magic happens. When you combine the two, you get something that's way more powerful than either strategy on its own. Your students don't just get better at remembering facts, they learn how to think with those facts. They learn how to take what they know and use it to navigate messy situations and build a strong argument.
All right, as we start to wrap this up, let's just zero in on the big takeaway. What's the one thing you should keep in mind when you're thinking about designing your next quiz, project, or test? It really comes down to these 4 things. Number 1, learning that truly lasts almost always involves some productive struggle. Don't be afraid of it. Number 2, desirable difficulties are all about designing for effort to supercharge memory. Number 3, ill-structured problems are about designing for complexity to build real reasoning skills. And number 4, and this is the big one, these 2 things are not enemies. They're partners. They work together. So really, the challenge for all of us is to shift our whole mindset around assessment, to move away from just measuring performance, a snapshot in time, and start thinking about how our assessments can actually build learning, how they can create knowledge that's durable, flexible, and lasts for the long haul. And that brings us to the final question, and it's one I really want you to think about. Looking at what you do in your classroom or your work, how are you going to intentionally and thoughtfully design a little bit of productive struggle into your next assessment? How will you help build knowledge that really, truly sticks?